Good evening. My name is Jonathan Davis. I'm superintendent of schools here at Circleville. I have the pleasure of kicking off tonight's event, and first want to thank all those who have put an immense amount of time into organizing tonight's event. I've had the pleasure of being on the Pickaway Addiction Action Coalition for over a year now. I know there's been a lot of work behind the scenes that has been driven by a lot of passion and a lot of energy around this very topic. And so those folks have brought us to this evening, which I know has been, like I said, a lot of work. As educators in this event beyond this space, is that Mr. Chris Thornsley, our entire administrative team is here, and our goal is to be supportive to the community as a whole. We've been involved, like I said, in these meetings and will continue to do so. A couple of highlights of things we're trying to do and take action in our schools beyond the classes we're teaching on a kindergarten through 12th grade level. We've also started a Drug-Free Clubs of America in the high school. We have about 650 high school students, and over 200 of those students have committed to being drug and alcohol free, and this is the first year of that club. So I'm very proud of that our staff and our students have made that commitment here at Circleville High School. Our role as educators, we know every day, is to take every student who walks through our door and build them up and grow them and encourage them in a positive way, because we know education provides hope. It provides opportunities, and it provides a brighter future. I'm excited about tonight's event and what will come of this, because I know that's exactly what everyone in this room is dedicated to do for not only Circleville and Pickaway County, but for making a dent in this epidemic. So I have the pleasure of introducing Molly Hedges, and she'll explain a little bit more about tonight's event. Thank
you. Good evening. October 13th, 2015. That was the day when the conversation started for Ty Ankrum, Pickaway County School Superintendent, and me. Ty and I were invited to the Columbus Foundation for an informal gathering with Sam Quinones, author of Dreamland, a book describing America's heroin epidemic, with a particular focus on Ohio. It was soon evident that this gathering was intended to make us aware of the heroin influx from Mexico that had reached Central Ohio communities at an alarming rate, and that we were not immune from it infiltrating Pickaway County's borders. That's when Ty and I decided we needed to start a conversation with Pickaway County leaders about this epidemic. The first and most important phone call I made was to Tim Colburn, President and CEO of Burger Health System. In Tim's words, a call to action is what Pickaway County needs. I composed impassioned letters and hand-delivered them to 12 community leaders, asking for their participation in a brainstorming meeting. All 12 of those recipients had marked their calendars for that first meeting on December 4th, 2015. This team of concerned leaders discussed the challenges and scope of the heroin problem in Pickaway County. Prior to our second meeting, Tim invited Dr. Keith Holton, retired Chief Medical Officer of Burger Health System and a private healthcare consultant, to facilitate our meetings. With Dr. Holton's guidance, agendas were set and meetings were held every 2 weeks through the end of March. As we continued to meet and discuss our goals and what other stakeholders needed to be at the table, the group, then known as Pickaway County Community Improvement Coalition, began to grow. Each successive meeting, we added more stakeholders until there were representatives from prevention and treatment agencies, healthcare, education, judicial, housing, law enforcement, government, the faith-based community, industry, media, a family member of an addict, and a community advocate. Earlier this year, the coalition determined that their mission was to be the following: to develop, implement, evaluate, and sustain multi-strategy Pickaway County-wide efforts to prevent drug abuse, addiction, overdose, and death for our citizens. The coalition's vision is lofty, but nonetheless something that we all need to aim for: ending drug addiction in Pickaway County by 2020. On March 23rd, 2016, an all-day planning event was held at Cooks Creek. The goal of this event was to identify 4 calls to action that would fill gaps or supplement the addiction resources that are already in place in Pickaway County. Attendees joined one of 4 groups, depending on their area of expertise and interest, and were instructed to develop measurable outcome goals. Each group developed a call to action that they would complete within a 3 to 6 month period of time. The first group was the treatment recovery group. They met their goal of providing a family-based support and education for those affected by addiction. FREE, which is an acronym for Family Resources, Education, and Empathy, is a support group that meets weekly for family members of addicts. The PARS resource table in the gym can provide you with more information if you're interested in that program. The second group was the sustainability team. It met its goal of developing an organizational structure to provide support and funding for the coalition's initiatives. Bylaws were written and adopted, a nonprofit status has been established, and initial funding was granted through Pickaway County Community Foundation and Berger Health Foundation. This group deemed it important to draw board members from 16 areas of expertise. The first 9 people to join the new board were leaders from that original group that met on December 4th. The remaining positions were open to applicants in the other areas of expertise that the sustainability group deemed important to include. Currently, there are 13 board member positions filled and 3 positions are pending. This volunteer board has renamed itself to reflect our mission, Pickaway Addiction Action Coalition, or also known as PAAC. The third group is the Prevention Awareness Education Group. It was to improve community awareness and engagement. They have marketed the message about opiate abuse through the compilation of information and a parent resource guide. And if you haven't already picked one up, it is at the PAAC table just inside the first door in the gymnasium. This spiral-bound guide is going to be invaluable to all of you that have teenagers at home, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, or an interested community member. The guideline includes important emergency numbers that may provide a lifeline for someone you know or someone you love. Lastly, the fourth group is the Law Enforcement First Responders Group. Its purpose was to provide access to education and support to incarcerated individuals or repeat offenders who are affected by addiction. They're currently working on starting an ANGEL program for addicts and are listening to help of volunteers from the community. So in a nutshell, PAAC is a concerned group of individuals, along with the 42-member original coalition acting as our advisory council, who are committed to collaborate and enhance existing community resources for Pickaway County residents and their families who are suffering with addiction. When you registered this evening, you were given a note card. Throughout this evening's program, please feel free to write any questions that you might have for the presenters on that card and give it to one of the ushers that are standing at the ends of the middle aisle there. And these ushers, by the way, tonight are from Circleville High School's newest club, the Drug-Free Club of America, also called Club Future. At the end of presentations, there's going to be a question and answer period, and if you would prefer to have your question or comment addressed at a later time, please write your contact information at the bottom of the note card and someone will contact you soon. Now, we're going to see how heroin affects one person, one family, one community at a time. This is Marin's story.
A smile that would light up her room. She had a passion for basketball. Then she picked up golf, and she was a natural with that. She really enjoyed the game.
The one thing that caught us truly off guard going towards the end is we didn't realize how badly she felt about herself. Look at the pictures. Why would we think she had a self-esteem problem? Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that was one of the major engines that drove her to areas where she really didn't need to go, didn't have to go.
My spoons started to disappear. And I'm not talking, 1 or 2. It'd be like, okay, I have like 3 spoons left.
And I remember I had $150 some in my wallet. I had, when I went to pay that, I had $75. And of course she started crying. And yes, I came down. Yes, I took her credit card. Yes, I used it.
And I remember going to court the next day and you know, beautiful Marin, and then bringing her in, shackles on her ankles, in these prison uniform. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how did we get here? I was just numb.
She needed the money to pay some people back, and she needed the money to trade the gas for the heroin.
If you would have asked us, what do you know about heroin? I would have said a street drug, a junkie's drug. You know, not something that you hear about on TV. It's not something that you would find in a community like Pickerington or any suburb. I mean, every day was that we have to keep her alive. We have to save her. If she said she was going to a meeting, I would follow ahead of time and sit in the parking lot and see her walk in, because I could breathe again, because she showed up. We got one more day. She's sober one more day. She never even had a car, but she still found a way to get it, because they would just bring it to the house when we were sleeping.
I remember walking into the apartment, and I've never heard such a horrendous scream in all my life. When I went out and walked to that bathroom door and saw him there holding my daughter, I knew immediately she'd passed away.
I know she really wanted to make it. And I know she doesn't want to see any other family go through what we have gone through. And I know she wants me to talk about it. And I found her journal that I bought for her. In her journal, she wrote a goodbye letter to heroin. Dear heroin, before I met you, I was full of life, at least from what I thought. But then problems started coming my way that gave me the excuse to meet you. It was like love at first sight. Not only did you do things for me, but boy did I do things for you. I lied to my family, friends, and even more importantly, I lied to myself. I would steal and cheat for you. I would risk my freedom and my life for you. But our relationship went to hell when the first and last time you really almost took me away forever. You had me for 7 minutes. I won this battle, and I will never have to suffer again. Sincerely, your worst enemy, Marin Briggs. She still went back to it, but it was still because of the grit it had on her.
Do I miss her every day? Oh, sure.
We can't bring her back, and we can't go back. But if we can help other people by telling our story, then that's what we have to do.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I
outreach initiatives for Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine, and I have to say it's, for me, a real honor to be here. You really have some really remarkable people in this community who have been fighting this with their hearts and their spirits for some time. We go back to Marin. I met Heidi Riggs in 2012 in January. I was at a meeting with Wayne Campbell from Tyler's Light. We were working on videos that became the Tyler's Light videos. And during one of those meetings, Wayne shared that he'd heard about another loss in the community. And we hoped that maybe Heidi would come and talk and share her story, because we knew how important it was for people to come out of the shadows and talk. And so I met Heidi 2 weeks after Marin passed away. That was 2012. That was fairly early on in this, before people talked about it, before people understood that addiction is a disease, before people understood that we need to take care of these people, that they are our brothers, our sisters, our grandparents, our children. In 2012, there was so much stigma, so much hatred. This year, Heidi Riggs opened a home for women in Columbus. It's called Marin's Hope. And this year we see many of those homes across Ohio being opened and taking people in. What we also know this year is that the numbers that we saw in 2015 were staggering. And I'm going to share those with you, but I want to make sure that at the end what I share is how far we've come and how proud we should be about the lives we've saved and the direction we've taken in communities and as the state. In 2015, Ohio Department of Health released the death data, and they released it 16 for 15. In Ohio, in 15, we lost over 3,000 Ohioans to accidental drug overdose. I mean, think about that number for just a minute. There are some towns in Ohio that would be wiped out. And think about what that means in terms of 8 people every day. 8 people every day. And think about if that was anything else. What if 8 people died a day from gunshots at a school, and 8 more the next day, and 8 more the next day, and 8 more the next day? What the response would be. And there is a tremendous response, but there needs to be more. And that's why we need people like you have here in your county, who are working so hard to bring the community together to stop this. What we're also seeing are things we are just astonished by at the state level. Yesterday, I get a lot of stuff that I have to read on Facebook. It's kind of 24/7, this work. And this article came up about 2 13-year-old boys in Utah who both were from the same school and both died of an overdose. 13 years old. There was about 20 of them that were talking about this drug that could be ordered over the internet and shipped to their house. 2 of them received it and 2 of them died. 13 years old. What we see in Ohio, and Ohio, by the way, is the second highest death rate in the United States. We've been hit hard in Ohio. We're fighting back hard. What's a particular concern now is fentanyl. For those of you who haven't heard about fentanyl, it's a very powerful opiate. People used to think of it as the patch when people were in terminal pain that people would wear. And now there's labs manufacturing it. Kind of spikes up the heroin. It's business. Spikes it up a little bit. If I'm a dealer in Marion, Ohio, and I got some heroin I want to get rid of, I'm going to spike it up. Maybe color it blue and call it blue drop heroin. And those people who are used to being sick and not being able to get to work and desperate they may search it out because maybe just once in a very long time they'll feel okay. They're not using to get high anymore. They're using to feel okay. And then we got hit by car fentanyl, and we get asked a lot, are the programs and everything you do based on research and evidence? As much as possible. But 3 months ago, nobody heard of car fentanyl until it hit Akron, and they had 240-ish overdoses in 10 days. Can you imagine that? The good news in that is about 10 people died, because thankfully, through these years, we've worked hard to get naloxone out to people. Hamilton County got hit too. About 20 people, 200 people in 4 days. One squad, I heard, did 28 overdose runs in an hour and a half. They are exhausted, and they keep doing it because we're going to save these people. And sometimes we hear things like, well, why? You know, why should we save these people? Certainly if it was my child, I'd want to use 12, 15 times. And maybe this is the time that they get better. The other reason is when I look at data that we receive from EMS from across the state, where there was about 20,000 administrations of naloxone across the state, I think easily, instead of 3,000 dead, we'd have 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people. I also know when I look at that data that I get data demographically, minimum age, maximum age, gender. And when I look at that data by county, very often the minimum age for both men and women is 0, because that's a child under the age of 1. But why they're ingested? Because they found it accidentally in their house or their mother, because heroin's the one thing that will separate moms and their children. Maybe nursing, using, and the baby overdosed. Or we find 96-year-olds with needles in their arms because over the years their tolerance built up and they became addicted. So the news is staggering, but the response is remarkable. And I want to show that one slide. So this is very new data. We kind of get some new stuff in our office. We get bad news, we get good news. But this is going to show you the overdoses for 16 per capita. And I think that the folks here have been working so hard should be very proud that you're in the category that is now the lowest across the state. And I don't think that's traditionally what's been happening here. And so we know the work makes a difference. We also need to look at your death data. I mean, that's what I get to look at all the time. Where do I have to go next? The highest death rate. So if I look at 2014, which is really when the work began here, you had 12 deaths. In 2015, when some of that work started being implemented, particularly the use of naloxone, you had 9. And across the state, between 14 and 15, there was a 20% increase. You had a 25% decrease. And you ought to be really proud of that. And is it, you know what it is? It's 5 people. 5 people that are alive now because of the work here. So when we do the work here and you can be frustrated, you have to remember it's made a difference. Our language has made a difference. What we also have to work on very much are educating people about the warning signs, because it's very, very tough to get someone in the throes of this to want to go get help. So we have to be aware, parents. It's very difficult for us to say, well, you got an outbreak of carfentanil. What do? You got to know the signs, so as early as possible you get them to help. So we're going to share with you a video that was produced out of Cuyahoga County about warning signs. going to speak for about 7 minutes. We'd like to, as they're speaking, 7 to 10, as they're speaking, if you have questions, please write them down, and as Molly mentioned, the questions will come up here. I'll take a look at them. If you want to write someone specific to answer the question, please write that on your cards. We want to keep this as kind of interactive as we can, but they all have great messages to share. I'm going to briefly introduce. They can provide a little more information as they like about, who they are and what their role is fighting this in the community. I'd first like to start with Ms. Julie Chapin, who's going to share a personal perspective.
Good evening. Again, my name is Julie Chapin. I'm happy to be here tonight to share my story. I couldn't figure out exactly what was going on with my son. He had been avoiding my calls and texts. He would make dinner plans with me and not show up. When I realized what was going on with him, I knew he needed help, the type of help that I was not capable of giving. I tried talking to him and encouraging him to get into a rehab facility of some sort, but in his mind, he didn't need help or was not ready to get the help that he needed. Watching my son go through withdrawals was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I took him to the doctor. My once 170-pound handsome boy weighed 123 pounds. I was actually afraid of him. Why? I'm not really sure, because he had no energy or strength to do anything. I think it was his looks. His face was caved in. His eyes were glassy, and his clothes hung on him. Each day, he got a little bit better, and he got his strength back. He had decided to quit using his drug of choice, which was meth. I thought he had hit his rock bottom and was ready to make the changes that he needed to, but he didn't. While I was still trying to encourage rehab, while nursing my son back to health, he didn't want any part of that. At that point, I realized that as his mother, and he was almost 24, my hands were truly tied. I couldn't get him to do what I knew he needed to do. After a few weeks, he had gained weight and was feeling better. Then he was gone against my wishes. Then one night, I started receiving phone calls. My son had been arrested and was in jail. I can honestly say that was the first good night's sleep I had gotten in weeks. I knew he was alive and he was safe. I never thought I would be looking at a mugshot of any of my children. My heart seriously skipped a beat when my cell phone rang, asking me to pay for a call from the jail. I, of course, accepted. He, of course, wanted out, and it was not his fault. Although my heart was breaking for my boy, I knew I had to be strong, and he needed to deal with these consequences of his poor choices. Waiting for him to come into the courtroom handcuffed in his orange jumpsuit was difficult. I had gone to the jail and visited him. I had encouraged him to talk to the judge and to his court-appointed attorney and to get into a faith-based program. We found the Refuge, a 13-month residential ministry. God was definitely working because everything fell into place and he was able to get into this program. I don't know what it's like to live outside of Pickaway County. I have always been proud where I come from, but at that time in my life, I realized how wonderful this community truly is. I received so much help and support from our judges, the sheriff, the deputies, the bailiff, and probation officers. These people do care. I wasn't asking for any special treatment. I was just asking for help and guidance. I didn't know where to turn or what to do in the situation I was faced with. I knew my son needed help, and I wasn't sure how to get it. An important thing I want everyone to know tonight, especially those students that are here tonight volunteering, that my son started using marijuana in high school, which ultimately led him to using and manufacturing the meth. I have learned a lot about addiction, and I have a lot more to learn. I do know that addiction does not discriminate. Addiction is a huge problem. Addiction is deadly. Addiction just doesn't affect the addict, it affects the entire family. There are lots of options for those who need help, and it is important to get the help at the best place suited for that individual. I will forever be grateful for the Refuge for helping me get my son back. There are so many people in today's world that are affected by addiction. I wanted to share my story so I can help save another child. I am happy to report that my son is out of the program. He's living with my husband and me. He is working about 50 hours a week and doing really well. I want to end with one final statement and question for you. I am happy to help do my part in ending addiction. Are you willing to help too?
So the Refuge does have a table here. It's very important now that we can focus on connecting people to resources. And I really am so pleased with how many came into that room. 2 years ago, it was hard to get anybody. Nice to see all those services. The next person who's going to be speaking is Reverend Wendell Brown from Heritage Nazarene Church.
I'm going to stand up if that's okay, because I don't sit very well. So let me tell you a really quick story. There was a guy by the name of S.L. Potter. For the first time in his life, he climbed a 250-foot tower and decided he was going to bungee jump on his 100th birthday for the first time in his life. And so he successfully climbed, made the leap. His children, 73 and 67, were there to watch old dad jump off of the platform at age 100. And he successfully climbed it, made the leap, and when they pulled him off of the bungee cord, you know what his first words were? Give me back my teeth. Okay? So here's the story. They came and interviewed S.L., and S.L. made this statement. He said, for the first time in my life at age 100, I actually feel like I know what it's like to live, right? What a sad thing at 100 years of age to actually learn what it means to live, right? I will tell you that the moment I became free from addiction was the moment that I actually started to live. It was the moment that I actually started to live my life. It was the moment when I had clarity and purpose that I had never received in my life up to that point. I'm not very proud to stand here and say, hey, Wendell Brown used to be an addict, and I was. I've done crystal methane. I have done cocaine. I'm not very proud of any of those things. But what I am proud of is that today I'm a different guy than what I used to be. I'm very thankful for that. Addiction affects everyone at both sides of the track. Doesn't matter what your upbringing is. Doesn't matter whether you're poor, whether you're rich. Doesn't matter whether you're all-state in basketball like I was as a high school kid, in honor society and national young leader. All of those things, it makes no difference. What makes the difference is what a person chooses to do with their life. I got out of high school and I joined the United States Army during the first Gulf War. I specifically joined to be a part of the 82nd Airborne Division because I wanted to be a man, I thought. And, when you're 18 years of age and there is a lot of testosterone around and there isn't a lot of checks and balances, guys find themselves doing a lot of things they're not proud of later on in life and find themselves kind of one-upping each other along the way. And that's exactly what it was for me. I got in a little bit of trouble, and I wish I would have gotten some rank busted from me early on in my military career, but the guy chose to let me off, and that just furthered this perception that I'm bulletproof, that I can handle anything. And before long, I'm in a car. We've just seen Pee-wee, the drug dealer, and my friend that I'm with introduces me to cocaine, and from there it went on and spiraled on down out of control. I know what it's like to sell drugs. I know what it's like to to write bad checks to support my drug habit. I know what it's like to do a lot of despicable things. And at the end of my military career, let me tell you, how do you, in the military, they'll drug test you. How do you get out of that? Well, your best friend snorts cocaine with you, and he's over the urinalysis lab. That's how you get out of it, right? And so as I get out of the military, I'm moving to Florida. Hey, I'm moving to Florida because there's no drugs in Florida, right? No drugs in Florida anywhere, right? I remember laying in my bunk and asking myself, is this going to be the moment I'm going to have a clean break from this stuff? And so I'm fighting with myself, this internal struggle. And the short story is, I decided that I was going to go to Florida, and it was going to be my opportunity to get away from it. And I didn't go see Pee-wee, the drug dealer. I decided to make it my break, and I moved to Florida with withdrawals, with all of those things, all of those struggles along the way. But there was a human spirit element that said, I want something better for my life than where I am. I'm an advocate for changing locations. That seemed to help me immensely, and changing my friends helped me immensely as well. I arrived in Pompano Beach, Florida, and it just so happens I moved in right next door to a Nazarene church. And I'm a Nazarene pastor, imagine that, right? And I went over, and it seemed like in one night that this guy was talking to me. And I want you to know that that night I asked Jesus Christ into my life, and that event changed me from the inside out. I was not perfect. I had my struggles. God had a lot of work to do in my life. But I am here today to tell you that the human spirit is powerful. You can read a lot of stories. You can read a lot of stories about the great things that the human spirit does with adrenaline in dangerous moments, or just the will to achieve things in life. The human spirit is powerful. But in my life, combine the human spirit with the power of God, and you have something that is unstoppable. I believe that addiction can be overcome with the power of God in our lives. One of the best things about this community is that we don't shy away from God. We actually, it seems, have a desire to embrace the faith community. And I'm very, very grateful for our leadership in that way. I think we're blessed to have this as a community. Finally, I just want to ask everybody here, do you actually believe in your heart that we can beat opiate addiction? Do you believe it? You think we can? I'm just asking for you to internalize that for just a second. I know it seems immense, but I will tell you, combine that human spirit element that says we're going to overcome this with the power of God. And how do we get the power of God? It's through prayer. So combine that spirit element that says we're going to do this with the power of prayer, and I think we can have an impenetrable force that can overcome a lot in people's lives. Never forget, this is a big battle, but never forget, it's a person's life that's attached to the struggle. Sometimes it's real easy to think, well, that person, they just made a lot of poor choices. It's their own fault, on and on. But let me tell you, every person in this room has made a bad choice in your life at one point or another. And the truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter the choice. There's still a person that has value and worth, and it's our job to make sure we help them as best we can. I'm living proof of that. Thank you so much.
We're seeing kind of a shift at the moment from 2 milligrams to 4, because when you're dealing with drugs like carfentanil and fentanyl, sometimes it's taking 12 doses, can you imagine, to bring people back. Our office put on a conference last January called Ideas That Work, because what really seems to make a difference is sharing of information. That's why we have a resource packet at the front desk that has many, many programs in it that are working in Ohio. But this video that you're going to see is about naloxone. And I think what really got to the law enforcement there primarily was seeing the 2 women in here who survived, were revived many times, and now live good lives. Because it's hard to sometimes recognize that. when you're seeing the worst of it.
I got high almost every single day for 10 years. And I got sober when I was 23 years old. The Edna House saved my life, and I have to go back to the place that saved my life. So when I go back there, I do whatever is asked of me. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, good.
I just wanted to stop by and talk to you about the alumni things that are coming up.
Okay, great. Have a seat.
I have a very good life today. I overdosed a dozen times and was brought back with the naloxone twice. And for the first responders, I would say thank you. A little over 3 years ago, I hated them. I was upset I was revived. I did not want to be there. I had to be arrested. I had to lose my family. I had to lose my friends. I had to build a record for myself until I was empty and I was lost. I would not have stopped using if I didn't have to.
3, 4, 5 a day is probably about in the average, and we have certainly seen days where we've seen as many as 10 in a single day. Looking at just recent statistics, in 2010, we gave around 415 patients Narcan. Now, I'm speaking not as the region here, but just for the City of Dayton Fire Department. 415 in 2010. So far this year, and the year's not yet over, we've given 1,010 patients Narcan. At least 5 of them were pregnant at the time that they overdosed.
30-year-old male, unconscious.
If we show up and there are no overt signs that lead us to believe that this is a problem with heroin or fentanyl or morphine, and there's no family or friends to give us that information, we'll use Narcan anyway.
You give me Narcan,
it doesn't harm the person. It may not help, but it's one of the things that we try to raise their level of consciousness, raise their level of respirations, and keep them alive. When we give Narcan, we block those receptors so that it's simply not possible for the heroin or the morphine or the fentanyl or whatever the opiate is to have an effect on the body any further.
We have pulse.
I would guess that 90% of EMS in the state of Ohio are carrying Narcan, and it's probably even higher than that, but all of the EMS in our area do. Law enforcement is increasingly more commonly using Narcan. The real key is the rural areas where EMS may have very long response times and where a law enforcement officer, whether a sheriff or a police officer, often is on the scene for many minutes before EMS arrives. I would encourage every law enforcement agency in the state of Ohio to carry Narcan.
We've been carrying it for quite some time, and probably 4 or 5 months if I'm not mistaken. But it is so important that they carry that because they're working with people that could overdose and be close to death. It's important that we use that Narcan to be able to save lives. We're also using it in our jail.
I struggled with heroin addiction for 7 to 8 years, and I am now in long-term recovery of more than 5 years. Today, my life is amazing. I get to help others through FOA. FOA stands for Families of Addicts, and it's a support group for family members who have addicted loved ones, for people seeking recovery, for people in recovery. My title is Director of Advocacy. I am finishing up my master's in social work. I have a little boy who turns 4 in April. And when I hear that people say, well, people shouldn't be given naloxone, you're just allowing them to continue to use, it hurts because basically they're telling me that I shouldn't be alive today, because if it wasn't for naloxone, I would not be standing here today. And I spent many days crying because I wanted to be clean and free of addiction's handcuffs so bad. My life was valuable, and other lives are valuable, and we wouldn't be looking at it if it was different. If it was somebody struggling with depression and they were trying to commit suicide, you would get them treatment. You wouldn't say, oh, if we get your help, you're just going to do it again. And I don't know why this is seen so differently. It's a spray, and it could save a life. Someone could potentially get better and get clean, and to not do that, you're telling people that their lives aren't worth anything. I'm very focused on having a life that means something, and it's not just that, but when you spend 7+ years in addiction where you're not feeling anything and it's all negative, then when you do get clean, and yes, it is a struggle to get clean. I went through absolute hell to get where I am today, but now I can honestly say, like 99% of the time, I'm just happy. I'm just ecstatic.
How I could be around my loved ones but not look them in the eye. I do groups when I'm asked. I give rides to 12-step meetings, and when there's fundraisers or things like that, I'm always present. I come back to the Edna House for myself. That's what I need to do to stay sober. To the first responders carrying the naloxone, I would definitely thank them. I owe my life to them. But if they didn't help me then, I wouldn't have the life I have today. And I know I was nasty and I was mean and I swore at them, and they had to restrain me at one point because they put me in this bodysuit because I was not myself. I went absolutely crazy, and I think it's very unfortunate that that's the side that a lot of them get to see. That the only side that the first responders get to see is the bad side. But for some people, it does change, and they do get better.
I think that if we say that we can reduce drug use and drug abuse in Pickaway County, that's probably an inaccurate statement. Because I think that it's better to say that we will reduce it. I think sometimes we don't really pay attention to how powerful our own individual decisions can be. I watched the law enforcement in the county over the last couple of years just be in a pure slugfest with these people that are bringing heroin and cocaine and different drugs into our community. And we would battle with them, and we had every single tool we needed to have a good team to deal with this. We had the mayor that told us, do what you have to do to get the drugs out of here. The sheriff and I had a great relationship of just trying to be innovative and come up with things. We've worked with the State Highway Patrol, and we've worked with the courts and the probation department. We've had the prosecutor's office work with us. I mean, we really had all the tools that we needed. I could not have asked for anything more. I couldn't have asked for any better cooperation. Everything was what we needed it to be. And we had some really major drug busts. I mean, the kind of things that every cop lives for, get a bunch of young guys and gals together, strap on all of our gear, load on trucks. It's almost like when I was a little boy playing Army. I mean, I'm getting paid for this. It's awesome. And we would go out and feel that we did well and feel that we accomplished something. And we really would feel that we're making a difference in the community. And then within 48 hours, new names would replace the old names of the people that we arrested. And even though those people we arrested was going away to jail for a long time, there was someone that took their place just as quickly. And so we had some really good success. In 2015, the Pickaway County Sheriff's Department and the Circleville Police Department was awarded the top detectives in the state of Ohio. That was against everybody, Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, regardless of the size or the skill sets. We had such a large heroin bust that we were awarded that. And it made us really proud, and it was something, that you feel really good about. However, in the course of that, and even with the award, and as innovative as what we were, and even though BCI had said that we had one of the largest heroin busts in the state, we were back at the drawing board again with new players. And so, all those people in that team come back together again to try to do the same thing over again. And again, we did the same thing over again, and everybody got to suit up, and we got to go out, and we got to get the bad guys. But again, I can tell you that, we're right back at it. Every single day, we have officers out working narcotics, and it's a never-ending process. And after all those arrests, you kind of find yourself questioning, what is the answer here? What is the way to go? And this year we had the opportunity for law enforcement and different community leaders to come together and talk and compare what we can do for each other, which was very unique, and I had never been part of that before. The interesting thing about it was there was a lot of problems that we thought we needed to solve that someone else in the group had already solved. We just hadn't communicated well enough to know that. And it also helped, I think, for me personally as a law enforcement officer, to understand that it's not just the raid and it's not just suiting up, but there are people out there truly in need. And don't get me wrong, I got into the job to help people. I know there's people in need. But in law enforcement, sometimes some of these people that are these addicts aren't the nicest people to be around. And so therefore, you're not always as quick to say, yeah, I want to go help that person who, just cussed me out or spit on me or something like that. But you have to understand the dynamics of it. And I don't think it's any different than over the years what we've learned with domestic violence victims. I can remember a time when a domestic violence victim, you kind of was like, well, they don't want to file charges. I don't really know what I can do. And, I guess they want to live in that environment. Now, that thought process has long since been gone, but it took us a long time to get there. And I think that's what we're doing right now, at least in Pickaway County. I think we're doing really well at changing the thought process of that user, not just someone who's violating the law, but probably someone who also is a victim in the course of this whole thing. So when we got together and we got to talking and learning these things, the sheriff come to me and he said, we're writing a grant to be able to use Narcan. And he said, I would like to include you guys in the grant. Would you be willing to carry it in your cruisers? And I told him, yeah, we'd be willing to carry it. But I told the sheriff, I said, I'll be honest, we're in the city. If the squad gets there really quickly, I bet we probably don't get the opportunity to use it. He said, you might as well have it, and I think you probably will use it. And I would like to